We're really excited today to launch our Zine and Archive project and have you all here as witness. Uh, I hope you're all settled in now. We had about a 5-minute time to gather, get situated. I thought I'd welcome anybody who would like to share in the chat or speak out loud to introduce themselves. We of course have our speakers, but I would love to have our visitors today kick us off in introductions. Does anyone want to volunteer? Just unmute yourself chaotically. So anyone? I see the chats going off. We have people here from Guelph today, from Toronto. Awesome. Anyone else want to introduce themselves? All right, well, maybe I'll kick it off then. So my name's Angela DeMars. I'm here from Hamilton, working out of Laurier Students Public Interest Research Group in Brantford. So we're just gonna jump right in, I suppose, with without introductions. And we'll sort of like go through each of our speakers today as time allows. Okay, so first off, I'll introduce at least Victoria. Victoria is our provincial coordinator. Can you take it away and let us know a little bit about what is OPERG?
Yeah, hi everyone, Victoria. I'm she and her pronouns, and I work as the OPERG provincial coordinator. OPERG provincial is a network of a lot of local chapters of the Ontario Provincial PERG network. So if you're joining, a few of you said joining from York University, joining from Toronto, there are PERGs in various campuses and various universities. And it's a network that provides support and is decentralized, but facilitates collaboration between all of the local chapters, provides resources and different services, and all of the PERGs run and operate under similar mandates, similar policies, but all function autonomously. And so in the provincial role, we support all of the chapters and folks from the chapters to do the work that they're doing. And today is a really great representation of some of the amazing work that those chapters do.
All right, so that's where we're coming from. That's where this project is originating from. And I just sort of nudged the provincial network to start archiving all the awesome zines that our network produces, because there was no centralized place where people could go. You would have to go to each respective office across the province if you wanted to read all the rad works. So the archive project is an attempt to disseminate all of these wicked ideas and artistic forms for people to share. So for those of you who don't know, I assume everybody here is excited about zines or has some idea of what a zine is, but if you don't know, zines are short, self-published magazines. They can vary from hand-drawn scribbles to really carefully designed artistic expressions. And this project was really an effort to revive our organization's rich history of funding and creating zines for people's interests. And, personally, from my perspective, self-published zines are radical. In today's world, most of the content that we consume is policed by megacorps. It's mass-produced and catered to us using an algorithm, all for the purposes of attention stealing, entertainment that fuels consumerism, and manufactures our consent for acts of atrocities that happen across the globe. Zines, by contrast, are uninfluenced, uncensored, and ungoverned by the shackles of popular modern media. Zines can't be suppressed using algorithms. Zines are handed off from person to person, and they allow for collective organizing and for sharing ideas that might otherwise have been hidden from audiences who would be emboldened by it. Zines are personal, zines belong to all, and importantly, zines are an act of defiance and rejection of mass media machines. PIRGs have been a resource to fund and an outlet for zine makers since this organization's inception. So if any of you are curious about making zines or have thought about it before, you might want to contact your local PIRG office. So the goal today is to launch this Zine Archive project where we've pooled these resources so that we can reach back into our collective wisdom and continue to build on our legacy of dissemination of radical ideas to build better communities. So we want to show you what we've been cooking, both present and past. And once you've seen what we already have, we'll hit the launch button on our Zine Archive project together so that you can access them through our website. You'll be able to visit it anytime and have access to these sweet little zines. So we're joined today by 5 zine authors or speakers, all of whom are connected by the OPIRG network. So as I said, my name's Angela or Andy Demars, and I'll be facilitating today. I use she, her, or he, him pronouns, and I work at the Ellisburg Brantford office as the programming and volunteer coordinator there. And I'll be speaking today as the co-creator of Gender Euphoria, which is a collective work of celebratory gender expression. I'll be joined by Aaron Elsa Brute, he, him pronouns, a self-described transgender alien currently living on unceded Haldeman Tract territory, Haudenosaunee, Michi-Sagig, Anishinaabe, and Attawandaron. He's originally from Cairo, Egypt. Aaron authored Leave Them Be, Grandma Sophie's Guide to Urban Edible Plants. Following that, we'll be speaking with Carrie Duncan, who uses they, them pronouns. Carrie's a prolific zine creator and staff person from OPIRG Brock, who created the Disorientation Guide to Niagara, the Coming Out Monologues V.2, and the Animal Activist Calendar. After that, we'll speak with Emily Green, who uses she, her pronouns. Emily is a queer Jewish activist who works as the programming and volunteer coordinator at OPIRG at York University. Emily is the creator of the OPIRG York Activist Coloring Book, as well as another zine we'll hear about later. And finally, we'll hear from Omorowa Egwakun, who goes by she, they pronouns. Omorowa is the volunteer programming and community engagement coordinator for OPIRG Guelph. So Omorowa's voice can be heard on the airwaves of Radio PIRG on CFRU 93.3 FM, which is a radio program that interviews activists, rad people, and community events, raises awareness of community events in Guelph and beyond. So all of these wonderful works will be found on our new web archive that we're launching at the end of this event. Hold on to your seats because it's going to be good. And I'd be remiss not to mention the wonderful folks behind the creation of this archive. We have Victoria Barnett, who uses she, her pronouns. She introduced herself just now. She's the coordinator for OPIRG Provincial, and she's done a ton of work to build this archive. So my heart goes out to you, Victoria. Thank you so much for all your work, as well as Naomi Samuel, who could not join us today. She was our research support officer for the project. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making this archive a reality. So before we move on to our archive sneak preview and interviews with all of these dope creators, let's take a moment and reflect on the lands we're on. So I'm going to turn the conversation now to Ellisburg Waterloo staff and Palestine solidarity activist Carly Rath.
Hi, everyone. For our gathering today, it's important we think about the land that we're on and how it relates to what we are talking about today. So I personally am calling in from the Haldeman Tract, land that extends 6 miles on each side of the full length of the Grand River. Britain promised this land to the Six Nations of the Grand River and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation as compensation for their role in the American Revolutionary War of Independence. But now only 5% of this land remains under Six Nations governance. So this means that I personally am currently located on the stolen land of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Attawandaron peoples. So because today is a virtual event, we're all joining from different territories governed by different people, different treaties, and Indigenous sovereignty and colonialism look different in each community. So I'm hoping that as people are able to introduce themselves in the chat, you can include the land that you are on. And as was shared as well, if you're not too sure, I encourage you to check out nativeland.ca as a resource to learn more. Today, as we talk about fighting for liberation, we must think about tearing down all systems of violence, including colonialism, and standing up against colonialism must transcend borders, all the way from Turtle Island to Palestine. Today marks 2 years since the genocide began in Gaza, though the occupation began years before that, and thus the story of resistance in Palestine began long before October 7th. We all must work tirelessly to end this genocide that is unfolding right before our eyes. The Zionist Project has its claws so deep in our institutions, whether that's our government, our universities, our media, that the work to fight for liberation is censored or portrayed as terrorism or anti-Semitism, instead of Indigenous people resisting the elimination of their people on their lands. These colonial lies and censorship are vital to keep in mind when we discuss zines. When the state represses reality, we must tell truth in other ways. When the media spreads Zionist propaganda, we must find grassroots ways to spread the messages of Palestinian journalists. When social media algorithms created by or funded by Zionists attempt to silence those speaking out, we must get creative and get louder. Our zine and archive project features zines on Indigenous sovereignty and resisting state violence, and we look forward to sharing them with you.
Thank you so much, Carly. Yeah, as particular political movements come, we really see the power that media giants have over what we see and what we consume. So, you know, reading zines and accessing zines is a way of subverting that and getting around that. And that's why it's so important that we share this. Thank you. Thank you again. So we're going to just outline the flow of today's event. We're right on time. Loving how well we're following our schedule today. So we started at noon, but from this point, we're going to dive into speaking with each of our zine creators from throughout the OPIRG network. So those 5 people I introduced earlier, including myself, are going to get an opportunity to speak to you. Then we're going to turn it over for questions at the very end. So please throw your questions in the chat or save them till the very end if you'd rather ask them out loud. There will be a dedicated half hour just for you to get those out. And then after that, at 1:40 p.m., we're going to officially hit the launch button on our page. And Victoria is going to showcase everything that's online and how you can get involved. So how's that sound? Is everyone stoked? Woo! All right. So let's see here. I am going to hand over the mic to Omorwa so that we can get started with our first set of zines.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Awesome. Yeah. So, hey, I'm Amorwa. I use she, they pronouns, and typically I'm in Guelph, but I'm calling in from Regina, Saskatchewan today, part of the Treaty for Qu'Appelle Treaty, home of the Saulteaux, Cree, Dakota, Lakota nations as well. So, thank you so much for having us. And I'm going to be opening our session today and turning the mic around on our host, Andy. So Andy DeMars, she, he pronouns, is the Ellisburg Brantford staff member who actually planted the seeds for the Zine archive project. He created the zine Gender Euphoria with inspiration from gender punk curiosity, nature, wildness, poetry, queerness, mysticism, weirdness, self-acceptance, and Jungian psychology. I love that. Andy co-envisioned and co-created Gender Euphoria with V. Pereira, they, them pronouns, along with 11 other contributors from Brantford's queer scene, with the intention of creating a celebratory space for gender queer folks. So welcome, Andy. Okay, let's dive right into it. How did you come to create this work?
So I've been meeting and chatting with genderqueer people, throughout my life, and I've always been like intrigued and fascinated by the mindset, but I don't feel like I ever had the opportunity to really dive deep into, when someone introduces themselves as they, them, or, any other pronouns like z, zim, etc. I never really had a firm grasp of what that meant to those people. And I wanted to create a safe space where we could have these in-depth conversations, and so that I could actually learn a little bit about how I relate to what people were saying about their gender identities. So this was both a personal exploration and an opportunity to celebrate people's differing identities. So that's kind of how it started.
Oh, that's so beautiful. How do you personally relate to the contents of the zine?
So as the interviews progressed, we sort of did this process of seeking contributors, posing a ton of questions to them about their identities and how they see themselves, and sort of what their most ecstatic version of themselves in all their gender expression beauty could look. And as the zine progressed, I kind of came to identify more and more with what these people were saying. And I think I came to the point where it just felt safe to like play in that space of like, okay, well, what does feel good for me? And, if I were to kind of take off some of the shackles of being a woman, as I'm usually identified as, what comes alive, just sort of made a space in me. And so now, when I feel safe, I do introduce myself with both female and male pronouns, because both feel good to me. So that's kind of how I relate to the content of the zine.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your words, what are you rebelling against, or what form of oppression are you standing up to? Who would your zine piss off the most?
Yeah, I like to think my zine would piss off the small town folks that I grew up with. I kind of grew up in a rural environment where there was more churches than like other establishments, like probably 10 churches for every 10,000 people. And yeah, I found it to be really rigid. Any LGBT acronym was just sort of unheard of or not spoken about. And I grew up particularly in like the Catholic school system, where it's like, you're going to hell. And I'm like, cool, hell sounds fun. So these systems of gender, I recall admiring the nun at the church that I went to. She was a really wonderful person. And I said, why aren't you the priest? She said, oh, women can't be priests. And it reminded me, or it taught me, that there are these rigid structures where certain genders do certain things. And it instantly felt wrong, right? It was something I wanted to tear down. I thought, why can't we change that? Why can't women also be in these positions of sharing their wisdom and knowledge? And so, yeah, I think this zine exists in response to oppression against women, oppression against queer people in general. And I hope it pisses off anybody who has too rigid of an idea of what gender means.
Mhm. Down with putting people in boxes. I hear you.
Mhm.
Um, so more about your zine printing. How did you end up funding it? Was it mostly out of pocket? Did you get help from an organization or grant?
Yeah, thankfully, when I came up with this idea to create the Gender Euphoria zine, I pitched it to the board of directors at LSPERG. And as a staff, I get, a little bit of latitude to create projects and bring things to life as well. But anybody who's a member of our organization could have done the same, to come up with a budget, come up with a proposal, and then submit that proposal for funding. So it was entirely funded through LSPERG. And we also had people who, once they heard what was going on, like the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office expressed interest in also contributing. So depending on what topic you bring to the table, you might be able to find funding from agencies like that.
Absolutely. And any advice for people looking to get into creating something like you've done?
Buckle up. It's this probably took me like 7 or 8 months of solid planning between myself and my co-creator V. V was doing their placement through the social justice department at Laurier, and so they actually got credit for their program for making this queer fuckery fluid spectrum stuff happen. And like, just get it started. Create your vision, find something you're really interested in exploring, and a topic that maybe you don't know that much about at the outset, but maybe use it as an opportunity to fuel conversations and to fuel interviews with people who are farther along that path, and you'll end up with something awesome. Like, this wouldn't have been possible without the 11 or 12 contributors to the project. It was not only like a book, but it was a space we created together, which was really, really special.
That's so
So do
beautiful.
it.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing, Andy. I'm happy to pass the mic back to you for the next interview segment.
Thanks, Amorwa. I can tell you're a professional at this. We'll talk with you more later about all your interviewing experience with Radio Berg, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. So for now, we're gonna turn the mic over to interview Aaron El-Sabrut. Aaron, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So I've introduced you previously as a transgender alien who makes comics, art, poetry, and video games. By the way, I didn't know prior to this that you made video games. I'm gonna have to check those out.
Heck yeah.
You say that they're all weird and trans and have to do with plants somehow. So you've published We Want It All, a radical anthology of trans poetics. You've also been featured in the Seattle Erotic Art Festival, and you're a recurring contributor to Zine. Your games and zines can all be found at toreachpoise.itch.io, and we'll paste that in the chat for all of you who are curious. So Erin's going to talk to us today about your zine, Leave Them Be, Grandma Sophie's Guide to Urban Edible Plants. So tell us, what is this zine about?
Yeah, so these are actually a pair of zines that I've published. So this one, Grandma Sophie's Guide to Common Urban Edible Plants, is exactly what it sounds like. It is a small plant identification foraging guide for a number of plants that people consider to be weeds, that just come up all over the place, that are good to eat, that are good medicine, that are really important for reconnecting folks with their relationship with the land, their relationship with their own food, their relationship with their own health, that I, really just like love and have deep relationship with and wanted to highlight. And this zine, it's kind of a one-page mini zine, and I've, always intended for it to be something that when people, purchase it from me, when I give it to them as gifts, that they photocopy it and reproduce it otherwise, because I want the knowledge, just like these plants, to proliferate and spread.
Oh, I love the heart of sharing. And one thing I have to say too is that all of the zines that we're seeing today are being shared from a place of generosity like that, where like everything that's going in the archive, it's because somebody said, you know what, I don't need to make money on this necessarily. I just want people to have this information at hand. And I think that's such a powerful thing, and a wonderful thing for you to have done. So thank you for sharing your work.
Thanks.
So how did you get to the point where you knew plants so well that you could create Grandma Sophie's Guide to Urban Edible Plants?
Man, I just eat a lot of leaves from the ground. I'm gonna be so for real with you. I just like when I when I myself was in university, I was really struggling with food insecurity, especially getting access to fresh vegetables. And I really loved hiking. I really loved just like walking around, adventuring in the city. And I, just started looking up like which of these leaves can you eat? Which ones are good? At the time, I was living on Coast Salish territory. And so I would find myself, picking wild fennel and then finding blackberries and then miner's lettuce and just kind of like going down to understand that actually like I can eat better than a person who has the money to buy food from the store if I just am in relationship with what grows and understand that actually so many of the things that people are constantly trying to get rid of are delicious and incredibly good for our health. And so I just kept, studying through, foraging guides, practicing, learning more and more about plant anatomy, and then through learning about foraging and learning about people's traditional relationships with plants, I also got really involved with herbalism, and have, been in training as a community herbalist for about 6 or 7 years as well, just kind of deepening my relationship with those plants.
That is super impressive. And it's hella decolonial of you to be harvesting your food directly from the land. I too love to forage, and I see some very familiar friends in this guide. And yeah, it's a shame how much we've forgotten the nutrients and the plant pals that are right underfoot all the time, between the cracks in the cement that you're taking to work or to school, in the brush alongside the road where, you might be taking the bus past. There's so many friendly plants out there, but make sure you know your stuff before you put anything in your mouth. What's the what's the phrase the black forager uses? Happy foraging, don't die.
Don't die. Yep. She's great. Definitely big recommend. And also definitely don't trust your phone camera to be able to tell what the plants are that you're eating. This is a piece of advice I find myself having to give constantly. If you don't affirmatively know what it is, don't put it in your mouth.
Totally. But guides and handheld guides and making yourself familiar with plants, this is an awesome starting point. These are some very familiar common plants, so I don't feel like you picked anything here that's too tricky for people to identify on their own. So these are great pulls from the environment.
Yeah, I hope that at least a few of them would be plants that people already recognized, and that would be something that would help encourage people that like you can do this, it's not that hard, and it's really good for you.
Mhm. So have any of the inspiration from your zines or your video games or anything else come from being a part of any social or environmental justice movements?
Yeah, totally. I would say that like a huge part of just my work is like obviously like trans liberation and like trans liberation on and with the land, especially for trans folks of color. I think that, you know, as trans people, we're often framed as being like unnatural in a whole bunch of different ways. And like a part of my journey personally as a North African trans person is about learning about like my ancestral tradition of trans people, my ancestral tradition of trans people doing plant medicine as a way to take ownership of their own bodies. And that is something that like constantly informs all the work that I'm doing. And I just really love like connecting queer people with the land because I think that a lot of queer people also like feel alienated from rural places, feel alienated from a lot of the like activities that connect you to the land, like hiking, like farming, and that these are actually things that are really important for us, especially as we are increasingly precarious. You know, these are literally survival skills.
Hmm. Totally. And I can really see the like how you're relating to capitalism through this work. Do you want to maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I think that like, you know, I'm very interested in all of the ways that we can make an economy of doing things for free with and together. You know, like as you know, I help out with the free weekly food distro at Laurier Waterloo campus that Ellisburg runs in collaboration with Luther, which is a free grocery store for students. I do a lot of like mutual aid cooking for my community, whether it's like unhoused neighbors, just like friends who are having a bad day. And I, you know, also try to get the food as many different free ways as possible, whether it's through like some of the sources that we have for the distro or from other community members who reclaim food from the Kitchener Farmers Market or, you know, literally leaf from ground that I either harvested or grew myself. One of the things that you know, consent is important, and also like one of the things whenever people um, come, you know, talk to me about foraging and they're really nervous about it, I often tell them like, if you've ever eaten a meal that I made, you ate something that I foraged. And that, you know, is just like a huge part of like safety, you know, making people feel comfortable with the safety of it, but also like the ethic for me of like, you know, it's not possible for us to escape capitalism in any meaningful way until we destroy it. But in the meantime, we have to find ways to make ends meet around it.
Hmm. Ah, well said. Well said. I guess I'll have to eat dinner at your place sometime because I want to try all your foraged goodies. Uh, well, we have only a little bit of time left, so I have to pick my best question for last. Can you tell us a bit about how you disseminate your work and, you know, maybe in the form of like advice for people who might want to do what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, to be really honest with you, something that's top of mind for me today is my Instagram account just got suspended due to some activism that I've been doing in my community. And so it like is really important for me that everything that I do and everything that I make be something that I can convey to people directly, you know, like a physical zine, this PDF that I just like send to people so that they can print it out themselves. I go to a lot of in-person zine events. I really love the Zinetopia series of events. They've hosted them in Kitchener, in Waterloo, and in Hamilton so far, which is really fun. Yeah, I just love like talking to people directly, whether it's online or in person, and just like sending people my stuff. I think that, you know, just creates so much more genuine of a connection that's beyond like the technical number of people that are looking at your work. If you look at your like follower count or your like views or whatever, like that's so much less important than like what level of depth are they engaging with this work. If only one person ever reads this zine and like genuinely learns how to get their own food from the land, like that's a success to me.
Absolutely. Well, I love the perspective you brought here today, Erin. Thank you so much for speaking with us. I hope that everybody in the chat goes and checks out your website, reads all your zines, plays all your games. But that concludes our time together. But next we have Carrie Duncan. Welcome, Carrie.
Hi.
How are you doing today, Carrie?
I'm good. I also, folks should know I'm a caregiver, and that might interfere with this, but I will do my best to not let it. But I'm doing okay. Zines are like, for folks who know, it's in all of my work. So this is nerding out online about zines any day, anytime, you know.
Yeah, no worries about the caregiver duties. If it's going to take you a second, give me one of these. If it's like, move on to the next speaker, give me one of these, and we'll do
Okay.
what we got to do, you know? So Carrie Duncan works with Oprah Brock, as we said before. They've published a range of community zines and resources, such as the Disorientation Guide to Niagara, the Coming Out Monologues V.2, and the Animal Activist Calendar. They also host zine making workshops and have actively supported action groups like the Willow Arts Community Niagara Reproductive Justice by creating and publishing their own zines. So Carrie will talk to us today about the variety of zines that they've created and how that's sort of shaped their worldview and the world around them. So welcome once again, Carrie.
Yeah. So do you want me to go into the intro one?
So yeah, first I'm going to ask if you wanted to maybe tell us how you first came across the medium of zines, like if you remember your first inspiration or introduction to zines.
Yeah, I was making zines before I knew what the word zine was. And so when I encounter folks often who say zine. And so I love having that discussion with folks, which like some folks say it that way, and that's cool. Like I think we shouldn't be gatekeepers of how people use language. But also like in high school, I was making mix CDs because I'm of that era, and I was making like little booklets for my like class projects. And you know, and so much of zine history is connected to punk rock music, which I am rural, so I did not have exposure to, but I was making ska music zines because I was that kid also. And then I loved a creative project in university. And so I got exposed to the concept, like not just making them, but the concepts at OPIRG Ottawa, because I was a board member at OPIRG Ottawa in my undergrad from 2009 to 2013. And I love that perk, and I love my perk now. And I got one, I am a book lover and a book collector, and let me tell you, zines are lighter and way easier to carry when you go to a like a bookstore or to an event. And so, and they're cheaper, which really I needed in undergrad. And so then I got it. In OPIRG, I had other board members who were like a friend of mine made up a poetry zine to commemorate her friend's passing. And it was like this laborious and beautiful project. And I had another friend make a zine on like the history of women's voting rights for her intro to women's studies. And I had another friend do her master's thesis researching like sexual violence supports and zines, and like introduced me to the Bernard Library in the US just of zines. And so I was like, oh my God, they're so much easier to make. Why the hell am I in academia? Why would I ever sit and write papers if I could just publish myself? And then in one of my last years of university, I had Marcelo, who is a previous OPIRG Ottawa staff, as my teacher. And Marcelo allowed me to make a zine about my relationship to the earth and had me like put all of my photographs of trees that I had encountered around the world and traveled to into a zine. And we talked about that as a form of knowledge sharing. And so it made it so much easier. And then as I finished my undergrad, I did the whole question of, do I do my master's? And the answer was absolutely not for me. Because I was like, why would I do one paper when I could publish zines and help other people publish zines? And so then I got into the editing side of it and like the creation side of it leaving university. And then Ellisburg funded a zine called Grasslands, which was about body hair. And that was Janice Jolie, who's a musician, and a range of other Waterloo-based activists created. And body hair is part of my identity heavily since I was a young person. And so,
Yes.
along with body hair and zines, mind maps are my I love them. And so they had me I got to apply to be part of this wonderful anthology. And let me see if I can find it. I took a photo of my leg hair. I don't know if you can see, and made a Word before we had Canva, a Word doc version of a mind map that I submitted to an anthology that was funded by the Kurds. And it's about why do people hate body hair. And so then I just was like, oh, I think I could use this in all type formats. So I started making people birthday cards out of zines. I made mini zines and book style, and it was just a photo. It became a photo book. And I was like, oh, I think photo albums are zines. And then we started making calendars. And I was like, I think a calendar is a zine. And then I spiraled out of control and decided I am not a zine purist. I believe in any form of self-publishing as a form of zine. I was just saying before, I feel like newspapers in of themselves are zine because they're usually independently published. And yeah, so it's the format that makes the most sense to me. And so now I use it in my day-to-day, and I have my board members and folks we idea generate on mini zines, and it's a great tactile thing. So I do it often in my guest lectures. I have students learn how to cut and fold, which is always entertaining. Because it destigmatizes the barriers of publishing. Something I hate about academia and really struggle with is how gate-kept undergrads especially are kept from putting their work into the world. And I want to create options for people to put out their work. I'm also a big advocate of using what we've made. So annual reports, I know we all do them. Why not put them in a zine? Why not just put them out to the world? And yeah, so that's kind of the background.
Yeah, and for those who don't know what we mean by annual reports, so each chapter, we're nonprofit organizations, so each chapter has to produce a report at the end of each year saying, here's what we accomplished with all the funds that were provided to us, and report on everything that happened that year, and all the movements and wonderful people engaged. Yeah, so I love the idea of turning those into zines. That feels really, really natural, as opposed to just having this pile of PDFs or Word documents or reports that are formally assembled, Yeah, very cool. I love hearing about your wild and storied history here. The grassroots one really spoke to me. I have art pieces myself of the shackles of body hair and body hair maintenance, and what a horrific gender torture device it is to shave yourself. So,
and for some people it's really liberating. So I think it's zines about relationships, and communicating all our different relationships.
True. Okay, well, that is a beautiful overview of all the different ways that you can relate to zines. If you didn't know, what do I put in a zine, it could be anything from your ideas on your thesis project that aren't making it into publication to a picture of your leg hair, we run the gamut out here.
Yeah, and I think that goes really well into the question about how I in location relate. So you had mentioned Disorientation Guide, which is this one. There are 2 volumes of this on our website, on the Oprah Brock site. And when I moved to Niagara, I knew no one. And Niagara is notoriously known for being siloed and really having 12 municipalities really separates us, which is wild because we are one region in a lot of ways. And I work a lot with students who I find get stuck in what I call as the triangle of Brock University, the Lofts residence, and Zayre's, which is the closest grocery store. And people weren't seeing all of the cool stuff that existed in Niagara. And I was so tired of people saying it was unsafe and boring because I was a server downtown. And I just was like, this is not true. And so we wanted to put together a guide that showed a list of things people could do. And it seems so simple. And like, we obviously have websites like 211 and stuff, but it's all people who have enough resources to submit to formalized websites, not the like in underground kind of in between options. And so the number of times I get asked where to get a good tattoo in Niagara is like often because people want tattoo referrals, right? Especially queer and like activist vetted. And so then we were like, we want to put out guides that bring people to all the amazing work that's happening. Niagara has a huge arts and theater scene that people could live here for years and never know about. And there's a phenomenon in Niagara, and I'm not sure if it's true of all universities or in cities, where you can live here for a year and know no one. And it's a consistent pattern. People move here, they know no one. And so getting this into their hands means they might go to a thrift store and then they might see another person who looks like them or a person who doesn't look like them. And they might find something that makes them feel confident. So they might go to the open mic happening at the cafe, and then they might see the poster. And we've heard these stories over and over. And so we're actually in the process, we want to do more specialized ones. Like we want to do a labor movement one in Niagara and a queer focused one in Niagara, but we want to do a third volume of this because there's just so many, I think, important things that they're not learning them in their classes, and we want to get that to them,
That's true. Like I think this is speaking to something that PIRG offices are really intended to do, which is to pass on sort of the knowledge of the community and what's going on in the community to students, because universities will keep people very siloed. And it takes a little bit of like time in that city, more than most students have had, to really get the feel of it. So yeah, if you just sit on campus fearing what the rest of the community looks like, you'll never get out there and experience like true community. So thank you for everything you're doing, especially for marginalized folks who need a little bit more facilitation, a bit more of a nudge. And yeah, you've contributed a lot of works to our archive. So thank you so much for that, Carrie. Our time is already up.
Can I just make a printing recommendation?
Absolutely.
So we print a bunch of ours by getting sponsorships from departments. Departments have printing budgets. So for all the other folks who are working, when you have colleges and universities and they want to distribute it to their client list or to their students. So have that as be part of the trade, and it saves so much money in printing. And then we're also putting out our like OPIRG Brock registry / wish list. So people will donate specifically printing as one of the things to us, because everyone knows my lifelong dream is to have a Xerox, and it's so far away from our budgetary goals. And so, yeah, I would strongly recommend like search for printing options, because it also builds buy-in to your zine, right? Like that gives you a partner who's then going to distribute your zine. And then maybe we'll hire you to come to a classroom or teach the students and like have them pass on that information. So it hits a few like distribution and funding points, just if you have to re-examine how you're going to fund something.
Totally. That's a really good point. Thanks, Carrie. You're our funding expert out here. Alternative means of funding expert. Yes. Okay, well, thank you once again. I'm gonna flip on over to our next speaker right quick. This is Emily. Welcome, Emily Green.
Hi, thank you.
So as I said before, Emily is a queer Jewish activist, a community organizer, and crafty tinkerer. She works as programming and volunteer coordinator with OPIRG York University. Emily created the Disorientation Week coloring book and the We Keep Us Safe COVID Cops and Community Zine, which were created in collaboration with OPIRG York and OPIRG Toronto. So thank you for being here, Emily. Tell me, how did these two very different but not so different zines come about?
Yeah, cool. Okay, maybe I'll start with this one. The We Keep Us Safe zine. I believe we created this in 2023. And it's a collaborative zine. We started OPIRG Toronto and OPIRG York came together, and we made a call out. So we brainstormed what exactly it was that we were the most excited to put together, and OPIRG Toronto had a grant that enabled them to make a COVID policy for their office and for their events. They hired someone who specializes in policy, and the grant also gave them funds for creating this zine. And so we did a big call out asking people to share with us their thoughts about what they learned from COVID-19, and also from a disability justice framework, why so many people continue to wear N95 or equivalent face masks, why that's important, and how it's feeling that there's no longer a mask mandate. So this zine is full of like beautiful artworks. Yeah, I love that you're screen sharing it. Some really thoughtful reflection pieces, and it closes with the policy that OPIRG Toronto crafted using the grant money. Well, it's a shortened version of the policy. So that's that zine. I feel really yeah, that it was such an important zine for me because I still am taking care to not get infected with COVID-19 or to spread it to my friends, family, and community. And this is really important to me, but it's also like really dissonant in this time when our government is telling us that it's just a cold and it's not important. Whereas from my perspective, it's more similar to HIV/AIDS, where it has a lot of impacts on our entire body and on our organs, and some of those impacts are unknown. And I think it's so meaningful to listen to disabled communities who are really asking us to keep caring for each other. And so I find this scene is like just really helpful to feel less alone in that politics and in those commitments and values. And I guess I should mention the funder was the Government of Canada's Community Services Recovery Fund, which I know nothing about, so don't ask me. I don't know about that. But that was something OPIRG Toronto secured from the government, and it really enabled us to make this cool thing and offer honorariums to those who contributed, which I think is a best practice for when it's possible, especially when you do a public call out and it's not just like to your friends. It's so nice to really like value people's creative labor. Okay, maybe I'll move to the, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
This
How about
one-
the other one?
This one has a much simpler story. So this coloring book was just my idea to make some fun swag, something that we could give out for free at our tabling events, especially in September. So every year we have a DisOrientation week. Oh, you might be hearing, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a Palestine Solidarity rally happening outside my office window.
Amazing.
It's very uplifting to hear people gathering in that way. Yeah, so this coloring book, the intention was really just to make something that people would want, that can be something fun, especially when people are in school and it's stressful. And I know for myself, as a neurospicy person, I find it really helpful to have something to do with my hands if I'm like just expected to just listen. So yeah, this was kind of keeping in mind that students have a lot of lectures that they're attending. And also an intention behind the scene was to kind of reach people who aren't like our likely subject, like our likely audience. Like I feel like sometimes OPIRGs and different activist groups, like we just draw out people who are already passionate and already interested in what we're doing. And something that I think that this coloring book can accomplish is get it into the hands of people who really aren't that interested in activism or social justice. And then it has all this like beautiful artwork that really, I think, has quite moving visuals about activist different issues in our society that need more people's attention. And, you know, attention is not an infinite thing. And sometimes we need really good art in our movements to get people engaged. And so these artworks are not my own art, to be clear. I not take any credit for that. These artworks come from the Just Seeds Artist Cooperative. There's a page at the opening that kind of speaks about them, but they're an artists collective that makes that focuses on social justice artworks and creative expression. You can take a look at the website. It's just justseeds.org. And they have a whole collection of graphics that the artists have placed on their website to share on a Creative Commons license, which basically states like you are not allowed to be using these artworks for commercial purposes, but they're free to use for posters and graphics and anything that you're disseminating for free. Yeah, that's how these two zines came to be, in a nutshell.
I am also a big proponent of using art as a great connector to folks who care about these things, but either don't have emotional capacity to like join a protest or, you know, don't have the knowledge to necessarily like make a zine of their own. It's just this like common denominator of care and creation that underpins zine life. Like this is step one in zine creation, is having a creative vision and bringing it to life. So I think it's like the smallest possible activist increment we could ask of people. So I really love it. We also printed copies for LSPerg. Thank you for letting us completely copy your homework, Emily. So anybody who's based out of Brantford or Waterloo can also find these coloring books in our offices. So much appreciated. And I can see that, you know, these are coming from a variety of different movements, right? Like disability justice movements for the COVID zine and, you know, so many different movements there from the coloring book. Maybe if anybody's interested in being engaged with disability justice in New York, do you all have anything happening there along those lines?
Ooh, great question. Presently, I'd say the only project that we have underway is kind of a mental health support where we're going to be doing monthly mood walks with the community garden on campus called Maloka. And so the first one we just rescheduled. It's going to be at the end of this month. I think, yeah, I can't remember the exact date. It will go up on our Instagram and in our newsletter. But that is an outdoor series that hopefully will happen once a month, where we're going to take guided walks and just connect with the earth and connect with different plant knowledge. I know that was talked about earlier.
Yeah, I might be interested in that one if he can get out to York, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think it's so like, as Erin was saying, it's like can be really powerful to just resist capitalism and connect with life through like uh, learning about different plants and plant medicines. And the one happening this month, we're going to go on a fungal foray and learn about the different mushrooms that are growing and different fungi. Other than that, I'd say at the moment we don't have any action groups that are focused on disability justice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
so
worries. No
yeah,
worries. That's where volunteers come in, and that's where people who care about it can connect in. And you know, the zine is like just a reminder for people that there's work that still needs doing. So
absolutely. Yeah.
that's our time for today. Emily, thank you so much. If you have any closing thoughts, otherwise we have to move on.
I want to add one more thing, which is just in terms of advice for people getting into making a zine. Like, I think, I mean, yeah, when we made the COVID Care zine, we had a budget for that and a budget for printing it really nicely and also providing honorariums. But I think the best thing about zines is that you can make them extremely low budget, and it's sort of a more accessible art form. And so yeah, I just wanted to add that. And if anyone in Toronto wants to know of a really good recycling bin for beautiful paper, just hit me up. Um, volunteeropergyork@gmail.com. I'll tell you where you can find some gorgeous paper for free in the city, that are off prints from a small publishing house. And so you could be making free zines using beautiful paper. It's a possibility.
Exclusive hookups only found here. Thanks, Emily. That's awesome. And I like the scrappiness too, right? Of the circular economy of printed goods. All right, we'll have to move on, but thank you for your time today. Our final archive contributor in our lineup. We're gonna introduce something a little different. I hinted at this before, but Amorowa is the host of Radio Purg. So welcome, Amorowa.
Hey, full disclosure, we do zines too. I have a bunch to submit, and shout out to Carrie because you also inspired me for our own disorientation guide this year. So that was a big success and brought a lot of people out. So I'll be happy to share it with you guys all after the launch. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. The launch is just the start, and we're just giving you a small sample, a small peek into what's in the catalog, but there's going to be way, way, way more to dig through, and we hope to continue to add to it as time goes on. So for now, we're just going to talk about Radio Purg and what Radio Purg's bringing to the table. So Radio Purg is a radio program interviewing activists, rad people, and talking about community events in Guelph and beyond. So tune into 93.3 FM if you are in the Guelph region. You'll have access to all the past episodes from our archive, but you have to get it live on the airwaves at 93.3 if you want to know what's coming up in your community. So we'll drop the link to that website here in the chat. And here we go. So, Amorwa, are there any humans who inspired your work?
Well, I cannot take credit for Radio Purg. I took it over when I first started this job about 4 years ago. But from my understanding, Radio Purg was the brainchild of some students and our former volunteer coordinator, Mandy. So they offered some support for students who wanted to talk about different issues, stuff that was happening on campus, stuff that was happening in the community. And just like it really took off from there. So I'm happy to announce that, yeah, on CFRU, our campus and community radio station, we interview those folks, and it's been a lot of fun. I have loved radio ever since I was a kid. So, I mean, for me coming to this job, as someone who had wanted to do their own radio show on CFRU, it was kind of a nice, like, built-in opportunity to kind of experience and understand how radio worked. But I grew up in Saskatchewan, so like I listened to some like jokesters online, or sorry, on the waves, CC Laurie and Buzz. When I came to Ontario, I started listening more to the CBC. So one person that really inspires me is Nana Abba Duncan, who is a fantastic Ghanaian born and Canadian raised journalist, who's now at Carleton, I believe. And like, of course, Sandy Hudson and Nora Loretto are some really great journalists and organizers in their own respective communities. I listen to their podcasts every week. And then my colleagues, of course, Mandy's been huge in terms of like organizing and getting to know the Guelph community. So it's been a lot of fun learning from everybody.
Shout out Mandy, who's not being interviewed today, but shout out for getting the Radio Purg started. Quick question, are any of the episodes, archival episodes, going to be Mandy's voice on the radio waves, or are you primarily?
I picked a few not quite Mandy, but actually some from our People's History Project. One thing I really love about radio is the opportunity for other people to be on the airwaves, so you don't have to listen to my voice every week. So we often have students and volunteers who are interested in particular topics, and they take over the airwaves themselves. So we've had some hired contract students through our People's History Project, doing interviews with local organizers and people based on a particular topic. So yeah, not just me. I'm very
Mm,
glad to have a diverse sense of group of people.
totally. Yeah, lots of voices and people from different movements with different experiences. That'll be really interesting. Uh,
Mm.
having gone to school in Guelph myself, there's lots of stuff I could probably tap into there.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your radio show, what sort of social or environmental movements are you generally connecting people with?
Oh, I connect with everything and everybody. One thing I love about it is just the opportunity to highlight how many cool things are happening in Guelph. I really resonated with our earlier conversation about like being stuck in school and only knowing the people within your program or in your department. And that was very much the same case for me when I did my schooling here in Guelph. So this job really allowed me to kind of open and broaden my horizons. So I've been able to like reach out to a bunch of people doing really cool stuff. There's been organizations who have been repeat customers and always highlighting their events. I love being able to even do like live recordings at different events and rallies, getting people's perspectives, sharing speeches for people who may have missed them. And yeah, it's everything. So I've done a lot of environmental stuff, indigenous sovereignty, um, just beautiful like Black liberations, talking about prisoners' justice, being able to highlight important days and times, and moments in history too, have been really, really lovely. So honestly, everything.
Nice. That I know for one that like Guelph is a great hub for environmental initiatives and protests and yeah, just so much movement happening there. So it would be, I know you're often a hub of information. So if anyone here is from that area, definitely tap in.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's not even just like protests too, like connecting with our tool library, who's having a recycle month, or I forget the actual term, but like they have a whole month of events of how to upcycle and reuse different things. So they're having a dinner that's coming up that I'm really excited. I've got an interview with them tomorrow. They often collaborate with high schools for their annual Socktober. So collecting donations and like letting people know where they can get access to it. So yeah, just keeping the people informed.
yeah, just connecting people with community in general. So, so important, especially for students, like we said, who might be new to a community and a little afraid to step outside their shell.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, so we don't have too much time left before audience questions. So I'm inviting everybody to drop their questions in the chat. But are there any lingering thoughts you want to share, Morwa, before we move on to audience questions?
Yes. Shout out to any and all university radio stations. I highly recommend it, and I can't thank CFRU enough for the training and opportunities that they've had and offered to students in the community. Yeah, being like be independent and not from big
Oh,
really awesome, as local as possible. And yeah, I think anyone who really wants to start radio or do something podcast related, I say just go for it. Just start recording and like hang out with your friends and see what comes out of it. You never know. I think it's really important for people to have their voices heard and to be able to share their knowledge in any format they feel is possible or accessible for them. And if you don't know how, I'd be happy to show you some ropes. And I know lots of people who would be able to help too. So yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out.
All right, we're gonna kind of seamlessly slip into the Q&A here because I see there's some questions already targeting you, Amorwa. So some folks are wondering, how far does the radio signal for CFRU reach? Can someone in KW hear the
Ooh,
show?
that's a wonderful question. I want to say yes, but I took that training so long ago that I don't remember. So that I would say your best bet for sure is the archives, and you can always catch them. They're generated usually the day after, so you can always listen to an episode after that.
And that would be at the link that Mandy just shared, I believe, the radioperg.podbean. Is that right?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
in the process of archiving our Radio Perg episodes as well, because the CFRU website is all of the shows that have taken place. So you do have to do a bit of scrolling. We're Thursdays 3 to 4. But if you would like to hear just Radio Perg stuff, you can check it out at that website once it's up.
Mandy's
Ah.
saying it's not a huge range. So 250 watts of community power. That's a really optimistic way of putting it. Thank you. Rainbows and sunshine. uh okay. I think we've covered the question, how does one start their own radio station, channel, or show? You said to just start, but is there any more elaboration you want to maybe give to people at this point?
Yeah, definitely. Again, hit up your community radio stations, universities, that are able to do have them, and see if there's any opportunities for new shows. I know CFRU is always looking for shows and stuff as well, so you're welcome to reach out to them. And then, yeah, going through the training and understanding the like radio requirements because they are syndicated in that way, is relatively easy, but it's a wonderful staff. They accept shows of all genres. They are always looking for people who just want to play music. And even, yeah, episodes or shows in different languages too are really helpful. So, yeah, I would say definitely CFRU, but if you can find something more local to you, then I would say that. And then for people who like to do their own recording, there's a bunch of like free apps and like things that you can download. So I've done a lot of my recording on Audacity, which is a free, pretty straightforward app. There's tons of YouTube tutorials on it. If you are able to find or borrow a microphone to just get like optimized sound, that's really all it takes. The editing process can be a little bit daunting when you are kind of starting out. I know that was the hardest part for me when I was learning. But now it's mostly just trying to get as much content and get people to help out. So, yeah, I would say those would be my advices for starting your own show.
Awesome. I hope that's enough for the people that are curious to get started. Now I'm going to turn some questions to all of the speakers, and you can just raise your hand if you have your answer at the ready. What would you say is the most meaningful piece of work that you have made so far?
I'm gonna need a minute.
I can share one from my personal work, which was I made a ritual guide for binding rituals. So for those who are interested in reclaiming paganism, it's but I framed it as I had an experience where I tried to file a complaint against a professional person who was just like quite abusive, and that complaint did not result in anything meaningful. And so the framing of the zine is for when we're struggling against oppressive systems and structures, and the structures and systems don't offer meaningful or adequate forms of accountability or justice or anything transformative. I think turning to magic and to kind of connecting with your personal power can be really meaningful. So I made a little zine that was offering other people who had been impacted by the same person, a little bit of support and solidarity. And I think that was a really challenging zine because it's really vulnerable to talk about like magical practices outside of just like my own friend circles. But it felt meaningful because sometimes it feels impossible. Like there's really no outlets for structural power to be changed. And I know that's not true, but it feels like so slow and tedious and sometimes very out of reach.
Yeah, it's a question that I had for people. You know, you kind of touched on it there, which is when you're being so vulnerable and you're putting little pieces of yourself out there for people to read, it can feel very like exposing. I don't know, you feel definitely a bit exposed, but I think there's liberation in that self-exposure too. And there's a magnetism of like drawing like-minded people in towards you that happens as a result that you know, you picture maybe bringing in all of your detractors or bringing in like the people that you're pissing off the most, but you're actually bringing in the people who are magnetized by it. So I don't know what a binding spell is, but I'm intrigued, and maybe I'll have to pick this one up. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have an answer? Maybe we'll take one more for the most meaningful. Yeah, Aaron, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I'm a project that like I'm kind of really proud of from the last couple of years and that I keep going back to and just like feels really timely for me is a game project that I made called A Secret Place. It's a little pixel adventure game. And it's really about like just like grief for Palestine, especially like for myself as a queer Arab person, and just like mourning like not just people but also the land. I think that, you know, it's something I've been thinking about obviously a lot this week. And for, you know, for a really long time, I think that I, you know, I'm really grateful that I, you know, grew up in a pro-Palestine, anti-Zionist tradition because of, you know, my lineage. And it's something that like, you know, the more that we have come to this time, where, you know, the most overt genocide is taking place, the more that people are becoming aware of this. And one of the things that I've been constantly grappling with is like, what does it mean for those of us who have always known and like for whom this knowledge comes too late? And so that's something that that project grapples with. And it's by donation, and all of the proceeds go to the Palestinian Red Crescent Foundation. I can post it in the chat.
Very meaningful work, especially today for the anniversary of October 7th. Thank you. Thank you for that work. And yeah, the emotional side of things, right? Because there's the content, there's the horror, there's the material itself, but we on the receiving end of this that have, you know, some of us have been involved in counter protests or movements, you know, trying to bring attention to this for so long. It does things to you emotionally, and I love creating spaces for people to talk about that sort of thing and decompress, like find ways. And art and creativity and zines are excellent antidotes to all of the activist burnout that I tend to see, and I try to encourage people to engage in that way. So I'm happy to see you're already doing that work of self-care and turning it powerfully into means of caring for the very issue that's, you know, at hand. So well played. I think Amurawa also had a crystal ball up to answer the meaningful piece of work question.
Oh no, that was me reacting to the binding
Oh, my bad.
themselves, but that's okay. Yeah.
Okay. If any of our other speakers then wanted to speak to that question, or else we can move on.
I have ones that are free online, and I think I submitted. They're from one of our action groups. So we have 3 action groups, and one of them is the Willow Arts Community, which does 3 seasons a year of free peer-to-peer art programming for anyone who identifies with mental illness or substance use disorder, which is a lot of, like, they have a huge membership. And I got to be the editor on 2 of their zines. They do a series of zines, as they have over the last, called Chatter from the Willow, and I got to be the editor on Our Personal Protest and Because the World Needs Us. And Our Personal Protest was 26 of their artist members contributed, including some folks who are attending today, which is lovely. And it was such a gift to be entrusted with all of this work and all of these, like to be able to group them and theme them, and then also gift this book back to the artists. And one of the artists actually got the book a few days before he ended up passing away and was able to see his work published. And that was like very important. And I then got like given that story from the ED at the Willow, and I'll put the link in the chat. And then the year after, we got a grant to work with Two-Spirit and Indigenous, queer, and trans artists in Niagara. And so we got to do a collection called Because the World Needs Us, which was named from one of our artists, Oki, who's a very loud and intense queer Indigenous activist here. And I don't know if you can see, but one of the artists is the cover and the back. And so then they shared their various experiences being Two-Spirit and queer and trans in Niagara. And as a settler, like we spent a lot of time building up what the process would be to meet with the artists. So we had a potluck, we had various info sessions, we had space where folks could bring them in to work on it. One of the artists I met at a powwow because she had a ribbon skirt that was pants. And I was like, can you put a picture of this? Can I take your photo and put it in? And she was like, oh yeah, and just talked to me for a long time about why she had an open like ribbon skirt and like how it felt more affirming, and to just be like invited in and also tasked with sharing the stories of especially Two-Spirit and Indigenous queer people and trans people in Niagara is very rare, and like took a lot of meaningful relationship building, and then like led us to like tabling at the powwow to like share this with the entire, and then which like led to meeting people we like really commemorate their stories and pieces like that. And so anytime you can have a project where you can have funding go towards Indigenous relationship building and doing it in a good way, I would like really strongly recommend. And then just promoting the hell out of it. We make all these things and then we have to move on, and yeah, just continuing to promote them. This was 2 years ago, and then this was 3, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah, this is what I mean when I say Carrie's prolific, like totally, you know, all y'all are impressive folks, but the Indigenous relations aspect definitely fascinates me, especially in the context of what you were saying earlier about academia and how publishing in academia can be exhausting, like in practice and in content like revision. I know in my case of doing my master's and working alongside Indigenous people on their land, and then not being able to acknowledge much of that story at all in my final thesis was rather heartbreaking, and you know, just felt wrong, and I had no control over it, even though I'm the main author. So that idea of being able to maybe reclaim those stories in the form of a zine or in some other regard is kind of spinning in my mind. And like, but it sounds that you did this in such a way that it was like constantly in consultation, and it, you know, your approach sounded really, really wholesome, and yeah, I just appreciate what you've said, and I can understand why that would be so meaningful. Beautiful. Shall we move on to the next question, or did anyone else want to respond to the meaningful piece question? All right. Hearing nothing. Is there any advice for people who are looking into creating a zine or something for a radio station? Any advice at all? I feel like we've offered a lot today, so maybe if whoever asked this question in the chat can expand on what they would like, what type of advice they would like, I'd be happy to just chat broadly about advice, but you know, happy to be more targeted for your needs too. So anyone have general advice right now?
My general advice is do it. I think that you know, like there's a tendency to think that you have to know what it's supposed to look like or how it's going to turn out or even how to do it. And like you don't need to know how to draw. You don't need to know how to get things published. You don't need to know how to like write in a formal way. It can just be like a pencil drawing, a handwritten text, or like, you know, you can type it all on your computer and just, you know, print it out, photocopy it, hand it to your friend. There you go. You made and distributed a zine.
Yeah, I'm recalling a workshop that I went to at Hamilton Artists Inc., where the workshop host had us just take a bunch of squares, like draw a bunch of squares on our piece of paper and put on a timer for 30 seconds and just come up with a concept and sketch it out and make a really messy first go at it. And you'd be shocked at how many, like you just keep setting the 30-second timer and each page is a new concept. And you will come up with something if you don't even know what you want to talk about, or if you don't know what should this next page be about. Or I also am a big proponent of collaborators and making it a conversation that then develops into some sort of media or printed form. So, you know, you have these thoughts in your head, but maybe once you invite some people to the table, it starts to take real shape. So that's my advice. Carrie, do you want to add?
Host a space where you're teaching other people, where you have to tell them to not be a perfectionist. Because then you get it's the same as doing class talks and tabling. Like if you were experienced one time, but the other person's experienced 0, it is your task to take the lead and make them feel comfortable. And so if you are struggling with your own zine project, maybe put it down and host a couple spaces where or just like drop-ins in your office where it's like, okay, this is our OPERC zine hour, or we do a online crafting and co-work once a month where we have our members come and anyone in the network can come hang out, and we have 2 30-minute timers. And we have to give the advice because I am a hyper perfectionist. I get super behind on all of my work for this. The other thing I really recommend is, so I have a zine that's been in the works for years, which has cutouts of like ladies from pop culture like Carol Burnett and Dolly Parton and Sarah Paulson, like hotties who I want to be involved, who I want to be more political. Or just they are, but not in the way I want. And I want to do speech bubbles. And it's been sitting in my undone zine for like 5 years. And I realized something I should do is photocopy the collage pages I made so I can create some drafts. And so then when I'm ready to work off the color pages, then I know what I want to do. And so make a bunch of backgrounds is the other thing that I realized, especially doing coming out monologues. We got all this amazing art and we had no backgrounds. So I had my board members sit for hours and like pull out all their childhood art out of boxes and stuff, and like just paint pieces of paper and collage and stuff. Because the more backgrounds you have, the easier it is to like not want that to be perfect and not slow yourself down in the time. Also, the numbering of pages is a nightmare. And so build your own, like I have lots of templates I can share, but build your own template. Like every time I start a zine, I take a bunch of yellow paper because we got gifted yellow paper many years ago. And I just fold it in half and I write out all the page numbers and I carry it with me the entire time so I can make notes on the pages and I can move shit around with a pencil. And I'm a Canva designer mostly. Like I do a lot of stuff online. I'm less collagey, but like my partner only collages. He refuses to use Canva. for zine making. And so he has no qualms with perfection. I'm like, how dare you? This is wild. And so, but just like if you are slowing yourself down, like realize that's what's happening. Because you will hate your project by the end. Like I've been in that situation where it's like I've tried and tried and tried and I just want it to look, and then I print them and then I find an error, which is literally the amount of times the OPIRG annual report last week was re-uploaded because we found one error on one page and I just couldn't stand it. It was a lot. And so yeah, take all the things that slow you down. I mean, you want to be perfect and like give your self space to practice, and then teach it because it really demystifies like any perfection. Because when I teach people to fold mini zines and they look wild, I'm like, let me tell you, I have folded them and they didn't even fit together at the end, and it's one piece of paper, And so, yeah, I think, and then the last is keep a mini ruler in your pencil case. It flattens edges so much better. It's so easy to rip paper if you have like a flat edge just in your bag. Yeah, those are some of my hands-on ones.
Those are solid. We have about 4 minutes left for questions, so I'm gonna try and speed run the last 3. So one question was, do any of you lead workshops on how to make zines or radio shows? And I would answer, I have not before, but I am interested to do so. I had a student come into our office and lead zine workshops, but yeah, if there's appetite for it, depending on what chapter you're located at, I'd say contact the office and say, hey, I wanna make zines, and I'm sure the respective chapter staff would be happy to throw something together. Does anyone else want to throw on top of that anything better than reach out to me?
Sure. I usually do like an introduction to Radio Perk in particular, when it comes to like work study students and folks and volunteers who are interested in the process. But can say that we are collaborating with a former contract staff, and he's great for workshops of any kind. His name's Kareem Mosna. But he does like interview like preps and like research and generally like getting your thoughts out onto a podcast or radio, and like does so in a very meaningful way, and like how to capture questions and help people understand like the beautiful process. So yeah, I would definitely recommend reaching out to Kareem, and I will find his email in the chat if you guys want to do a workshop.
Very cool. Next question. What role do you think small zines, radio, or artwork plays in the larger cultural or social movements? Well, I think we started by talking about how subversive ideas can be suppressed, right, in mass media. And so consuming media from small local creators is an act of rebellion. It's an act of rejection of whatever you're being force-fed, but also happy to turn the question out to the rest of the group.
I think it changes accessibility. Like I love the graphic aspect. Like I am a slow reader and a slow processor. And I love zines that are essays, and I think that's great, and I really encourage them. And also, like my brother can't read, so if I need him to have, graphics. So like I like will make him like a Dragon Ball Z coloring book, for example, because he understands the graphic. And so I think like in addition to challenging things, we have to look at like if social media is our like bite-sized consumption, so are mini zines, so are radio, so are like this easier way to process, because we also have to then edit ourselves to be more accessible, and we have to think about like a visual way to depict it, which is useful like for various languages. Like we do that for our free store, like we use icons on some of our stuff so that like you don't have to read or speak English. You don't have to be able to read it all, and you can still indicate stuff. And so yeah, accessibility, I think, is a big part of it.
So would love to talk more about that, but I think the time is coming short. So final question we'll answer is, how do folks overcome the perfectionist tendencies? Did we touch on this a little bit? We might have.
Yeah,
I
it was
think
addressed.
we did. So I think we can get back on track for timing then if we wrapped up our questions there.
I had one more thought, if we have a
Yeah,
minute, and
sure.
just the question about like how zines can be subversive. And I just wanted to share one thought on a zine that was one of the earlier zines that like really profoundly reshaped my whole way of like my whole worldview. It was created by an organization called No More Deaths. I was just looking for it on the internet and I didn't find the zine that had profoundly reshaped my worldview, but I did find this interview with them in the zine archives that I just dropped in the chat. But yeah, just that, yeah, things can be published that are a profound like counter to the propaganda in mainstream media. And this one just made me understand that the border patrols are just like, if they really wanted to keep immigrants and people walking across the border out, they could, because this organization, No More Deaths, that operates on a tiny budget to support migrants crossing the border by foot, they have a whole understanding and have mapped out like all of the routes that that migrants take and are able to put water out and food and offer other support. And they know all of these routes really well without having a huge budget or a huge amount of surveillance and military technologies. And that it's in the design that there are supposed so-called illegal immigrants. Anyway, I looked back at that zine recently because of what's happening in the States right now, just to like ground myself in what I think is a clearer sense of reality than what is often being presented in our media. Yeah, so I just wanted to add that in terms of thinking about the potential for zines to like reshape people's understandings of the world and to also get really subversive information out much more widely without all the barriers of yeah, like I think as others mentioned, like academia, but also the barriers of like just media structures that sometimes do have to consider legal ramifications and government policy and government censorship. And so yeah, I just wanted to add that one because I felt like that one really was one of the earliest things that was like, oh, zines are actually quite important.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good note to leave things on too. I think as we turn to actually disseminating and sharing the zines that we have, Victoria, can you kindly take over and guide us through our launch?
Yes, I will do that. I'm removing all the spotlights from everyone so we just see the screen. You know? Okay, cool. So I'm gonna do a screen share now, and you're gonna see me click publish on the actual page. And then if everyone wants to right now, you can go to operg.org, ontarioperg.org, and you'll see, I'll screen share this first, that it's not yet there. Hold on, I'm going to do it in all the stages. Okay, so here we go. Sharing. So here's our current website, and there's the beautiful announcement for today's event. I am now going to jump into the back end, which we don't normally look at. And you're going to see me click this button, and I'm clicking add to menu. And now it shows up down here. I'm going to click save menu. And now come back over here and refresh this page. And there it is. And now our Zine and Archive project is officially live on the OPERG provincial website. I'll start just by saying the first couple rows are all of the zines that we looked at today. This is what Carly, we looked at what Carly was on, some of Carrie. The radio show that Omarawa spoke about is here, and you can download the certain episodes and listen. And I'm just going to show you, I'll actually show you the radio. So you click on the image. Beneath each image is like a brief summary. Some have published dates. The idea behind this is that it's going to be built up more and more as we go by, but I'll show you a live clicking on it. You'll see different categories. So when this is a bit more developed, we'll have a category option where you can click and explore them. And then to actually see or download the particular thing, I'll click this and you'll just see that it'll take me over here, an audio file, and my sound is not connected to this screen share. So it started to play. Here's the gender euphoria zine that Andy talked about. And if I click download, it downloads it, and then you have it right there for you to look at and access. And I'll do a scroll of the page. We have many more things to add to this archive. This is how many we were able to get added to today, but the plan is to continue to keep adding to this, exploring what other submissions people give us, as well as just continuing to highlight the work that the different chapters and action groups are doing. And so that's how you access it. It's going to be on the home page, but the short link is ontarioperg.org/zap, and we can put that into the chat as well. But now it's there, and you can access it whenever you would like and would need. So congratulations, Ontario Perg, all of the local chapter Pergs. It's a really exciting moment to have it officially launched, and thanks for putting it into the chat. Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, I'm also doing sort of the last minute announcements part, so I'm going to go back to sharing our presentation again. This part of the presentation, we're letting folks know that you can still submit zines and archive materials. This QR code here will allow you to scan and bring you to the form that we ask folks to fill out the information, so that we put all the information onto the website correctly with proper names and dates and that type of thing. That's also on our Instagram and on the website, so that's there for you. And then you all do have the link already, but ontarioperg.org/zap, Zine and Archive Project, it will stand for. Yeah, and that's the conclusion of actually launching it. And there are some thank yous to be made, but I will say quickly just that we will be making sure that the architecture of the Zine and Archive project works and has search functionality. We didn't finish all the aspects of that by today, so my apologies. But we're really excited to have what's there launched and allow folks to keep submitting things. I'm also going to put into the chat a thank you and a link to all of these things. And before saying goodbye, just wanting to also announce, so this was the first OPERG provincial collaboration lunch of 2025. So this one right here, October 7th. And our next one, actually, someone had brought up disability, I think Emily brought up disability justice. So our next session will be on design and disability justice. And then through the rest of the year, you can see the various topics. If you're interested in any of those topics and would like to also speak to that topic, just get in touch for sure. We'd love to have more of the PERGs and people who are active at the PERGs be involved. And yeah, that's the end of my announcement. So I'll pass back to Andy.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody who submitted to the archive. We've literally got hundreds submitted to us, so this will be constantly updated. So please do check back every so often to see what's new on there. And yeah, get in touch with us if you have any ideas or thoughts or zines you want to create. We want to hear from you. So Appreciate y'all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.